your job as a salesperson, as a GSM, as a GM, as a service advisor, is to get them to stay under your rooftop. And you do that in a very simple way, which is answer the question.
Right?
Don't say, hey, it would be great. It would be great if you could come into the dealership. We're available from, 10 a.m. It's like, I didn't ask you if I could come into the dealership. I asked you, did you have a 25 Maverick available?
Welcome to Driven Loyalty, the podcast with proven strategies and expert insights tailored for automotive professionals looking to maximize retention, enhance customer experience, and drive sustainable growth. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Driven Loyalty, where I get to talk to, well, anybody and everybody I want to talk to when it comes to making more loyal customers. And today I got a special guest for you. I'm actually super excited to get into our topics today. We got a chance to jam a little bit before we started recording, and there are some really cool topics. You guys are going to enjoy this show. But hey, we can't do cool content like this without our sponsors. And here's a quick message from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Podium. So here's a question for you. What would it mean for your dealership if you had one more employee who worked 24/7, never took a break, and was focused solely on turning every lead into a yes, even the after-hour ones, into test drives, a sale, and ultimately, more revenue? Well, let's meet Jerry, Podium's brand new AI BDC. Jerry is a lead conversation machine, ready to jump on every lead that comes in instantly. He can answer questions, keep those leads engaged, and even schedule test drives, all without any direct human supervision. And here's the best part. With a seamless handoff to your sales team, your customers will never even know they were interacting with an AI. If you're curious about how Podium's AI BDC can help you move more cars, check it out at podium.com/SWJ. That's for Strategy with Jason. That's podium.com/SWJ, or just hit the link in the show notes below. All right, guys, we're back. I told you I got a special guest. I got the one. I've been told the oh so famous Tim Wilson with Digital Footprint. Tim, what's up, man? How you doing?
Famous in his own mind, Jason. Famous in his own mind.
Did you like that intro? Was that okay?
It was great. It was perfect. It's perfect. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, we're going to have a lot of fun today. All right, Tim, I love our topics today. I think we got some really cool stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to chat a little bit about AI. We're going to chat a little about just meeting the customer where they're at. And then we might throw in a little something about tariffs. I know. Whoop, I think I probably just hit an algorithm by saying that word.
You sure did.
Right? And then we'll get into a little bit of what the OEMs are doing right now to kind of help dealers, create more loyal customers. But Tim, what I'd like to do is I enjoy kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story. Because I'm always fundamentally fascinated how people chose or got their way into the automotive space. So Tim, if you don't mind, let's kick off your introduction there and how you got started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry.
Happy to tell you my origin story. It's a stumble story. This is 2011, so I've been in the automotive space for about 15 years, and I was working in the loyalty space in Canada at an organization called Air Miles, and I had a friend of mine that I worked with who had been working at Google for a number of years, and he finally enticed me enough to come in for an interview with the managing director at the time. And the interviews went well. I got the job, and I was what was called a head of industry. So I was going to be a lead on a certain vertical. And the managing director at the time said, you've got experience in travel and finance and a couple of other areas. What's of interest to you? And I said, well, I'd like to do entertainment or travel or finance. And the next day he came back to me and said, okay, great. You're going to lead auto. I'd never spent any time in auto really in my life. I was fascinated by the notion of digital and how digital could help any business, but I had no idea how simple yet complicated the automotive business is as it relates to marketing, as it relates to sales, as it relates to customer loyalty. And I've never looked back. I really tell people that I stumbled into the automotive industry 15 years ago, and I still thank the managing director at the time for giving me this vertical because it's never dull. It's always on the move. It's always changing. We'll talk about some of those things today. It's a remarkable industry, and to have been able to have been a part of it at both the tier one, tier two, and now the tier three level as I work with dealerships and help them with digital strategy. It's super exciting to see how this industry is evolving, both inside the vehicle, inside the dealership, and outside in the United States. So
It is
that's
it, it is a fun, ever evolving business. It as big as it is, it's actually quite small because funny enough, me and Tim actually met
yeah,
in Canada, of all places. Neither one of us actually are in Canada right now, but that is actually where we met.
yeah,
Tim, it was quite. I remember actually when Google kind of announced your role, Tim, because I was like, "Oh, that's cool. They're gonna put someone out there kind of in charge of this space, and
yeah,
that's where we met. We met at the office. I think one of
yeah,
Google's little conferences, little get-togethers. I
yeah,
remember those guys. If you ever get a chance, the Google office in Canada is pretty cool. I mean, Google office anywhere is pretty cool, but the one in
yeah.
Canada had this little mini putt putt that actually went around the building, and I can't remember what was it, 15 stories high or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was the 10th floor or the
10th
ninth floor.
floor?
I can't
10th
remember.
floor?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
when I first saw it, I always thought I was like going, "Well, what happens when a ball comes off this thing?"
yeah,
But it was a cool office, very, very cool office, and,
yeah,
hey, I'm glad you got into the business. Um, it's funny, like I said, it's a big industry, but a small industry because we met so many years ago, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden our paths have crossed again just recently. So I'm like, hey, we need to do a recording together. This
yeah.
would be awesome. So I'm glad you came to come do this with me, Tim. So
Sounds good.
let's kick it off. Kind of with our first topic, right? Because Tim, you've seen it, like you said, you've done the tier one, the tier two, the tier three. You kind of had an opportunity to see how both the marketing and the engagement that's created from that marketing, all right, really kind of play out at all of those levels, right? Today's focus is always going to be around loyalty. And, I mean, we were talking a little bit about this. Like, I mean, I think one of the things that are necessary to create a loyal customer is to be where the customer's at when they're there. And me and you
Yeah,
got chatting a little bit. Well, like, what about after hours? Because I just remember reading the stat recently from a big website provider in our industry, just exponentially how much more is going on after hours. And I'm just kind of curious, have you seen the same thing in kind of your efforts? And what are maybe some of your dealers doing to kind of address those after hours customers?
yeah, yeah. I think really it's an emerging part of the business. The stat that I have is that 40% of calls and chats happen after hours. So let's say between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And the question that I ask my dealership clients is, what are you doing about that? Like, and this is sales, this is service. It might be more service than it is sales, but what are you doing to give that customer service, right? We want to be there when the customer is ready to talk to us. We want to be present when they're ready to communicate, to start communicating, whether it's on the sales or the service side. And I think there are tools that are out there, really from an AI perspective, where you don't need people power. You can use AI to answer phones and to set appointments and to answer questions that a customer may have. Hey, what time does the dealership open tomorrow for service? I want to get an oil change. Do you have the latest Silverado, the latest F-150, the latest Maverick available? That is a service, that is a value that you will deliver to the customer that isn't going to push them away from your dealership. It's actually going to make them want to come to your dealership because you answered their question. And we didn't talk about this, Jason, but one of the things that I find amazing about chat tools that use AI versus chat tools that use salespeople is the salespeople don't always answer the question. AI always answers the question. So again, from a customer service perspective, I want to make sure that I'm delivering the best value in a timely manner to my potential customer, be it on the sales or service side. And AI, I think, really, really helps with that. That's 24 hours a day. You don't have to do that from 9 to 7. If you have a tool that allows you to have your phones answered, or you have a chat tool on your website that allows you to communicate with customers 24/7, chances are you're going to have way more customers that are walking into your dealership, again, from a sales or service perspective, that are very happy.
Well, and I mean, and think about that for a second, right? I mean, actually, when you were talking, Tim, I have to admit something was one of my first jobs. All right, and I might be aging myself a little bit right now. So if everybody out there watching and listening,
You're 27. It's fine. I
yeah, okay, well,
totally
yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm in
We're both 27.
that. You know what? There's the meme floating around, and every once in a while I post it. I'm like, I am 27, and it's like an old guy, and I'm in the automotive business. Who said this was going to be stressful? But
Yeah.
anyways, one of my very first jobs, all right, was working at Radio Shack. All right. And if
Mhm.
you remember what their motto was, their slogan, I mean, their kind of their mission statement, which I thought was phenomenal, right? Is you got questions, we got
We
answers.
got
Right.
answers. Yeah.
And when I first got into business in 1999, that's just kind of how it was. I mean, I just, like I needed to know everything. I needed to know the rear end axle ratios on the 2500 versus the 3500, and I needed to know, the fuel economy differences between a diesel and a gas, and I needed to know all these things because, I just assumed that's what you did at a car dealership. People had a question, you had an answer, and that as long as you were the source of that answer, you could build what would be ultimately trust, and trust could ultimately turn into a transaction, and transaction can ultimately turn into a loyal customer, right? I just assumed that's how things were, and I think they were for some period of time. Remember, we were talking a little bit earlier in 1999 that my dealership got its first website, and look, that thing was just that was it. It was just glorified Q&A. In fact,
Yeah.
actually, I remember typing some of the Q&A for that website. It was like, you have a question about this, and it was just, here we had an answer. For some reason in our industry, that faded away, and it became very transactional. You agree with that? I'm just curious.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, th- the automotive industry, the dealerships have kind of shot themselves in the foot because, there's the memes as you talk about of, I'd rather get a root canal than go buy a car, because that in-store experience is very hit and miss. And we haven't talked about the key word that I think is a part of loyalty within the automotive space, and that is communication. I touched on customer service, but if you are not communicating effectively and efficiently with your customer, they are going to walk out the door. This is an industry where there are lots of choices, there are lots of vehicles, there are lots of price points. Your job as a salesperson, as a GSM, as a GM, as a service advisor, is to get them to stay under your rooftop. And you do that in a very simple way, which is answer the question.
Right?
Don't say, "Hey, it would be great. It would be great if you could come into the dealership. We're available from 10 a.m." It's like, I didn't ask you if I could come into the dealership. I asked you, did you have a 25 Maverick available?
Can I get it in this trim?
Right.
No, but you're absolutely
Answer the question.
100%. I was going to ask you this, Tim, because I know you've seen a lot of Google reviews, right? And the one thing I've noticed, I love identifying patterns, by the way. Super big pattern guy. I love seeing patterns, right? I have never seen a review, or well, I guess what I've seen. No, I have seen reviews that are usually amazing or horrible, and usually the core element of those was communication, either a total lack of it, all right, or miscommunication, or this was amazing. They told me everything I needed to know. They got all the information I needed. Every question I had was answered. I just felt comfortable. You see that same pattern?
Yeah, yes, uh, absolutely. And I will tell you, we're going to go down a rabbit hole here, Jason. When I was doing presentations for Google in both Canada and the US in front of dealers or in front of dealer associations, we'd have a Q&A afterwards, or people would come up to me afterwards and ask me questions. And I kid you not, the number one question I got every single time I spoke was, "Hey, Tim, I got a bad review last week. Can you take it down?"
Yeah.
To which, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, the short answer is no. But I want you to look at that negative review as an opportunity. You have an opportunity by responding to that review, by acknowledging whatever it is that they're talking about, and by fixing the problem. Because if you fix the problem, not only will that person probably resubmit a review saying, "Wow, they took care of my problem. That was an amazing experience." They're going to tell 15 people about it. So if you and I know we're not talking about reviews, but one of the other topics that I really harp on with my clients is every form of communication, whether it's a chat, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a review, is an opportunity for you to do right by your customers. For the ones that are not happy, for the ones that are disgruntled, you have an opportunity to turn that around. And I guarantee you, if you turn it around, you are going to turn that customer into a customer for life. You're not going to be able to do it for everybody. Don't expect you're going to bat 1,000. You'll be lucky if you bat 500. Maybe you'll bat 333. But if you are able to turn some of those clients, those customers around, you will have loyalty until the end of their days, and they're going to tell 10, 15 of their friends how awesome you are.
You're 100% right. I've never, ever, all right, have seen a Google review where, they over communicated with me. I was on their website at 10 o'clock at night and I had a question and they answered it. Like it was just yuck. I can't actually believe that they're there when I want to talk to them. So we were talking a little bit earlier about AI and guys, I think that is a great example of a tool that can just really help in our communication efforts and just being where the customer's at when they're there. All right. And taking that old school Radio Shack approach of you got a question, I got an answer, right?
Yeah.
And look, honestly, I gotta be dealers. If you're out there watching and listening right now, if you don't have a strategy, all right, for your after hours communication, I,
You need one.
right? Go ahead, Tim. What would you say?
No, honestly, you're missing out on, again, the stat was 40%, I think, of calls and or chats happen after hours. I don't think you're willing to miss out on 40% of potential business. Maybe you get half of it, but that is going to be something that you need to look at as an organization. And there are tools and there are systems and there are platforms that are all AI based, that know your dealership, that know your inventory, that know your hours, and they're going to be able to answer those questions either via phone or via chat on your behalf. So the next day, you're going to have people at your door that you didn't even know were coming to your door because you answered their question 10 hours before. It's a must.
You're absolutely right, Tim. Look, with today's technology, I just don't think there's an excuse, all right, to not have a strategy, all right, for after hours. Tim, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit. We were talking about when I was an old school salesperson, and one of the things I used to do to really kind of set my week ahead of everybody else's is that I would come in when the dealership was closed on a Sunday. All right, right after church, I'd come by.
Brilliant strategy.
I'd park my truck right out next to the gate, and I'd just drop the tailgate, sit there, all right, and have a stack of business cards. And I would tell you 30, 40 people, all right, would just kind of walk the lot to see what we had and, what was new and stuff like that. And I was there ready to give them a business card. And I'm telling you, Tim, there wasn't a Monday that I didn't have 3 to 5 appointments already ready to go. All right. Before everybody was just beginning their week. Right. And look, so if I did it physically and it hugely benefited me. Now there's technology that can actually just do this for us. Tim, I actually saw this. I thought it was absolutely ingenious. This was a Podium. Shout out to our sponsor, but this was an actual Podium client. All right, I saw this. I thought it was so smart. All right, they put a sticker on their door. All right, with a QR code saying
Mhm.
that the dealership's closed, but if you have a question, scan this. Right. And
Yeah,
I'm just like, see, there you go. I mean, how
yeah.
easy would it be to put something like a little sticker like that on every single car you have on the lot and just saying, hey, you here after hours? You got a question? We have somebody or a system or a solution that can help assist with majority of those questions. I mean, how awesome is that? Anyways, I digress. I go down these rabbit holes, man. I get it.
But
But
but what you're saying, Jason, is, and what we're realizing, what we're talking about in this industry, is customers are researching 24/7. So we, as an industry, as a dealership, have to be available 24/7, 365. You can't staff for 24/7, 365, but we now have the technology that enables you to have a very robust conversation with somebody through an AI tool, through a chat program, or through the phone. You need to take advantage of it.
you're absolutely right. Again, like I said, there's just no excuse. Hey, I wanted to go down. We kind of started talking a little bit about it, and I just kind of want to go down this because we were talking a little bit about this before we were recording. I'm seeing a ridiculous amount of post right now in the industry. You can't turn on a news channel without somebody saying the word tariff. All right. Look, I don't know where, if you're out there watching this, I don't know where you sit on the fence with all this. And frankly, I just don't care actually where you sit on the fence on this. But fundamentally, what I think we have to acknowledge is that this economic environment, all right, is going to create some additional questions. All right, and I think if you're not training your salespeople to answer these questions, if you're not training whatever chat solution or whatever you have out there to answer these questions, I wouldn't be surprised right now that any conversation around purchasing a new vehicle, the conversation is exponentially increased 10-15% because of the additional questions around tariffs. Tim, are you seeing the exact same thing with some of the people you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is changing every hour. Certainly every day, and certainly every week. And it's impossible, in my mind, to have your salespeople trained up to the minute on what's going on. Because, like, in the span of our conversation today, Jason, things could have changed, and we're not looking online, so we don't know. But some of the research that I have done is it's going to be very specific to OEMs. I've heard Ford manufactures 80% of the vehicles that they sell in the US in the US. GM is 56%. Toyota, I think, is about 60% in the US. So it's going to depend not only on the OEM, but on the model that you're looking at. And I think you, as a consumer, are going to need to continue to do your research. And you, more importantly, as a business owner, as a dealer principal, are going to have those tools, be it your salespeople or your chat provider, to be very up to speed on what the latest and greatest is with tariffs. I think Ford did an amazing thing of incorporating employee pricing, because that takes the guesswork out of it for the consumer. They're like, I'm going to get this the same pricing as an employee gets. That's
From
easy.
from one marketer
I
to another. You saw that, didn't you? You're like, oh, dude, that was smart. That was a good one, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Now, you talk to the dealers, they might be a little upset because it might squeeze their margins a little bit. But I think from when again, customer service. Communication. Let's make it easy for the consumer. This is easy for the consumer. And I'm seeing it across a bunch of my Ford stores. They are having good months, good sales months. So I think tariffs are going to be an issue for months. I think we've got inventory. A lot of the OEM and dealership partners that I've talked to have a pretty robust set of inventory, so they're good for a couple months. But what's going to happen in June? What's going to happen in July when we have inventory that we're importing from Mexico or from Canada or from Korea or from wherever? We don't know what the price point is going to be for those vehicles. I've heard could be 5 grand more. I've also heard it could be 15 grand more, depending on the vehicle. So you have to, as a business, as a dealership, stay on top of it and have your tools be ready to answer those questions. I don't know if you've looked at this, Jason, but Google Trends, I think on April 3rd, or no, it was the end of March, the number of tariff related Google searches was just skyrocketing and going through the roof. So, as a business that is obviously going to be impacted by tariffs, you as a dealership need to be ready to answer those questions. Maybe it's an FAQ on your website just to sort of whet the appetite of a consumer. But any chat platform that you're using, I know Podium is amazing at this, will have all of the latest and greatest information because that their AI chat GPT is scraping the internet every single minute of every single day to get the latest and greatest to make sure that the information that they're delivering to the inquiry to the customer is most relevant and most up to date for them.
Well, not only most up to date, but also most accurate and sticking
Right.
really to the factional side of it. See, dealers, here's something that you guys have to realize. All right. You employ a lot of different people. All right. And there, with a lot of different people are going to come with a lot of different opinions. And, when it comes to tariffs and conversations and the way that we answer the questions, all right, from an individual perspective, you can get some wildly different answers. And those answers can be rooted just in which side of the aisle that they sit on. Okay. I think it's incredibly important, all right, to be able to present just the facts, not the opinions, just the facts, all right, and ensure that your team is doing that, but then also all your solutions, all right, are doing that because, and I appreciate what Podium did here because, a lot of these language engines out there, all right, they're looking for what is being said online and trying to mimic that. But this is in one of those situations where we don't necessarily want to mimic an opinion, all right,
Right.
as much we just want to be able to present the facts. And here's what is out there currently right now. To your point, Tim, things are changing very, very
Yeah.
rapidly. And, guys, this is just, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a ton of opportunity right now. I mean, Tim, both you and me have marketing brains. And boy, man, my brain is like, I could have some fun. All right, man. I'll be
Yeah.
going to some tariff savings events and I'm going to be moving. I mean, look, Ford did it. They saw it like, boom, man, we're going to get into it. Let's do this. Right. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity in a time like this, but I think and I'll stop on this, but I think for everybody out there watching, listening, when you're answering these questions, right, these questions need to be answered in a professional, all right, and neutral, all right, fact-driven way, all right, and you need to ensure that your team is doing that and your technology is also doing that because that is just not a place that we need to go to, right? Now, speaking of OEMs, and since you did mention Ford, our last topic of the day, and I wanted to bring this up because me and you got talking a little bit about this when first we started recording, was what is OEMs doing to kind of help focus on loyalty? Now, for everybody out there, loyalty is not retention. Okay. Just because you retain a customer in your database does not mean they're loyal. Right. And that's just something you need to understand. Right. I go to the Nissan dealership up the street to service my Armada. Don't particularly like most of the experiences I've had there, but it is literally not even a mile away from me. All right. So it's convenient. Therefore, they retain my business. All right. If I moved not a chance in heck am I going to try to go out of my way to go back to that dealership. I'll just go to the one that's close to me. So there's a difference between retention and loyalty. And we were talking a little bit about what OEMs can do from a program perspective to help focus on that. Tim, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on what you think OEMs can do and what you've been seeing OEMs do recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think OEMs need to focus on the communication, the customer service. And one of the things we didn't talk about, Jason, that aligns with that is the timeliness of those communications and customer service. There is an instant gratification mindset in consumers these days, thanks to our friends at Amazon, where if you don't get back to me in 4.5 seconds, I'm moving on. I'm going somewhere else. So I think if you as an OEM are looking at partnering with providers, I think it was last week that Ford Direct has now officially partnered with Podium for their chat and voice tools. That is, I think, early days, but that's a commitment that I like to see because they recognize, the OEMs are recognizing, okay, we've got to be where the customer is when they want us to be there. And back to, 9 p.m. at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, uh, make sure those tools, those platforms are available on your website to answer that question in a timely manner, because AI is very good at responding in a timely manner. Um, the salesperson, the service advisor may be busy, they may not have time. 5 minutes goes by and they haven't responded, and you've lost the consumer or that potential customer. So
Just
I
even
think,
also the complexity of just shopping for a car. I mean,
oh yeah,
have you tried to build and price an F-150 recently?
no,
There's like 62 different ways to configure it.
yeah, F-150 is a little bit of a, that's not fair.
I know.
F-150 has so many
I'm used
permutations and combinations.
to it. That's true.
You chose that one on purpose.
I did. But no, I mean, think about it though. I mean, and I love the fact, right, that the OEMs are because they're realizing there's a difference between having loyal customers and just retaining a customer, right? Like Tim, I was telling you, like I started my career in 1999, all right, and you were loyal to brands, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they were just like there were brands that I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. There were brands that just built better cars, longer
Mhm.
lasting cars, maybe more reliable cars, maybe not so
Yeah.
sexy, but maybe more fuel efficient cars, right? And then there were cars that were they were built loud, they were built big, they were built, you know what I mean? It's just like, all right, people were loyal to brands for reasons, my grandpappy drove a Chevy and my pappy drove a Chevy and I drive a Chevy, it's just,
Yep.
that was just the way it is. And Tim, today, I don't really believe anybody builds a bad car. I
No.
mean, they're all I mean, I think they all have problems. You know, th
Yep.
from a technology and an interior perspective, they're all gorgeous. I mean, I'm blown away what you get in a Corolla, what you get
Yeah.
in an Elantra. Like, I mean, it is cool, right? I mean, just nobody builds a bad car. So I just, again, I think where loyalty was kind of built around the product you put out there. I think loyalty moving forward is going to be around the service that you provide. And you have
Yes.
said this before, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what you mean by that.
Well, so let me. I'm going to challenge you on one because
Okay,
I
go
love
for it.
the
Go for
challenge.
it.
I agree with you on the loyalty piece in terms of OEMs. I still think there is loyalty among your F-150, your Silverado, and your Ram. I think the truck loyalty is the last bastion of loyalty when it comes to an actual vehicle. There is so much product parity as you talked about right now. An Elantra is a great car, a Corolla is a great car, a Civic's always been a great car. You're going to have any vehicle that you buy today can last you 10, 15 years. Whereas when you and I started in the late 90s, you couldn't say that. No disrespect to Hyundai, but the Elantra in 1999, I don't even know if it was even out in 99, but with the first few rounds of Elantras weren't great. They've done an incredible job of fixing it, making them really slick, beautiful cars. Um, so I think as it pertains to loyalty, that's the end of my challenge. You are absolutely correct. I call it the little things, Jason. Um, the responding in a timely manner, the answering the question. Like these are not complicated things to do, but I find that there are dealerships that still don't do it because all the salespeople care about is getting in the showroom, coming to the showroom. And I may want to come into the showroom, but I need you to answer these three questions first. So please just answer the question. And I think if you do that on a consistent basis, not just once, not just with sales, but also with service, you are going to build that customer loyalty. You are going to drive more loyalty for that customer. And again, I'll go back to my Google review example. If I have a good experience at ABC dealership, I'm going to tell my wife about it. I'm going to tell my kids about it. I'm going to tell my family about it. And that could drive even more customers indirectly into your store. Conversely, if I have a lousy customer service experience, guess I'm going to tell even more people about it. I may share it on my socials. I may post reviews on every single review site around there. And there are lots of them: Dealer Rater, Yelp, Google, Facebook, like everywhere. Depending on your ability to sort of quell that disdain for your dealership, um, customers have a lot more power. Consumers have a lot more power in terms of shouting from the rooftops today than they did even 15 years ago. So you as a business, you as a dealership have to be very focused on understanding that one conversation, one outreach, one discussion across sales or service could make or break this relationship. Uh, and treat every conversation as a golden opportunity. Because again, if they bring their car in for service, maybe they've got more cars. Maybe that service experience is going to turn into, I'm going to buy more cars from you. Like you have no idea the buying power of that consumer or of that consumer's sort of influence circle in terms of friends and family. Um,
It's huge. It's huge.
that's
And I mean,
that's how I look at it.
and you're absolutely right. It all comes down to what the conversation strategy is, right? And you know, I think for a lot of dealers out there, we don't have one. It was just, well, is it just not? I don't just pick up the phone. It's not the phone. It's like no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no, no. Like there's a difference between just having conversations and then being intentional about the way and the consistency and the frequency that you have those conversations. That is a big, big game changer. And there's technologies out there
yeah,
that help us to do it. And here's the bottom line: this is what your customers look, guys. If you This is just what has to happen. You know, earlier in the show today we were talking about it. All right, over 40% of your customers are looking and engaging with you online after hours. Nobody's there. Like you need to have a conversation strategy. All right. Look, your customers are asking your salespeople about tariffs. They're You need to have a conversation strategy. You need to make sure that not only your people, but your technology can also execute on this because God forbid they say something they're not supposed to. Like that'd be horrible.
yeah,
And then finally, look, y'all should be taking note when you hear companies like Ford Direct, all right, start saying, well, look, well, we're gonna get and partner into a conversation tool, a conversation engagement platform. Like you got to take note of that because look,
yeah,
if you don't do it yourself, your OEM just may do it for you. So
yeah.
anyway, look, I know
Yeah.
we're getting towards the tail end of our time, and you can see Tim. I get a little. Sometimes I get a little worked up, but it's okay. It's
You know, I love the passion. I love the excitement. One other thing that I want to touch on that you and I didn't talk about, Jason, but I think is equally important. I call it the surprise and delight. Um, and I bet there's a bunch of dealerships that do this, but one of the surprises and delights that I think customers get is when a salesperson that they've been talking to, they've been engaging with, the salesperson's like, oh, you know what? I'll just do a quick walk around video. I'll do like a minute, minute and a half walk around video of the inside and the outside of the vehicle that you're looking for, and I'll send it to you. And I think, again, customer service, communication, driving loyalty. You do that. I've seen salespeople that do that. They sell more vehicles. Period. End of discussion. If you're going to send a generic walk around, it's not as successful. But hey, this is Tim. We were talking on the phone today. I just want to give you a quick walk around of the Silverado that we were talking about today. Here's the color. Here's the outside. Here's some features. Here's the inside. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 o'clock for our appointment. Let me know if you have any questions. That surprise and delight, that is going above and beyond. Well, maybe not. It's not going above and beyond now, but I think consumers are wowed by that kind of stuff. That is a personal touch. That is something that they're going to remember. They'll see your face and they'll hear your voice, so they'll know who you're talking to or who they're talking to. And that, to me, again, is going to drive that customer into a very happy place as they come into your dealership.
I mean, Tim, it's funny you said Silverado, because the Silverado Trail Boss that's literally sitting in my front house, my front yard right now, I bought because of that. All right, I send
Right.
out every time I go to buy a car, I force myself to buy it as a consumer. Sometimes,
It's painful. I talked about the root canal.
right? Yeah, I mean, actually, it's so much easier for me just to call Bob, right?
Yeah.
Bob for years. Bob, I need one of these. Can you help me out? Right? But I don't. All right. So I send 13 leads out. Not all 13 even reply back to me. Okay. Seven out of them reply back to me. All right. Only 4 of the 7 actually reply back to me in the way I want it to be replied back, which was text message. All right. I just can't answer the phone. Be totally honest. I'm here with you, Tim. I'm doing this stuff. I can't answer the phone. It's only 4 of them. Only 4 of them responded back to me. So we went from 13 down to 7, down to 4 that actually responded back to me in text message. 1, all right, sent me a video. All right. And that dealership is 187 miles away from me. All right. I never stood foot in the dealership. They literally brought it to my house. We signed the paperwork here at the house. And that's it. Right. So like, yes, no, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, but just to harp on what you're saying, 100% makes a huge difference. But again, that if that salesperson didn't really complete that the delight and surprise was there. So I'm like, oh, okay, so my expectation was high. If he didn't complete that the communication that went along with this great experience of getting the video, then it would have fell short. But he did. He executed, right? He set the bar, maintained the bar the whole time, and it was an amazing experience. And I'll do it all over again, right?
So let me ask you a question. Even though you're supposed to be asking me the questions, how many people did you tell about that experience?
Including you, you're probably the 77th person I've said it to, right? And then, by the way, there's going to be a podcast dropping later this week that I'm talking literally about that. So there'll probably be another several thousand, all right, people that are going to hear about that experience. So no, you're absolutely right. Hey, Tim, before I let you go today, for everybody out there watching and listening right now who would love to connect with you and maybe even continue some parts of today's conversation, because I know we touched on a lot, what's the best way to connect with you?
You can email me, Tim at digitalfootprint.biz, digitalfootprint.biz. You could also give me a phone call, 650-889-8150. I love the dealership space. I love providing strategy assistance. I do a lot of different work for a lot of different dealerships. And if you have any questions or want to chat, obviously feel free to reach out anytime you like.
Awesome. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been an absolute blast. Hey, for everybody out there watching and listening, one of the biggest compliments you can give myself or Tim today would be share the show. It means a lot to us, actually. Helps us keep this stuff going, right? If you got a friend or a colleague or a manager that needs to hear some part of today's conversation, it would mean the world to us if you share the show. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to watch or listen today. We really appreciate you. Tim, thank you again. Y'all have yourselves an amazing day.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Driven Loyalty Podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Happy